Richard II. Okay, I'm giving you a little bit more of the timeline that I had on the board the other day, but I've backed it up a little bit because this doesn't include any of the people from the first tetralogy. Remember the other day I had up here also Henry VI and Richard III. We're completely skipping them for the simple reason that we're completely skipping them. We're not doing the first tetralogy. We're only doing the second tetralogy. In this is what complicates an awful lot. Edward III was such a fertile SOB. He had so many kids that just created so many problems later on. His eldest son was Edward. Now I put up here Wales, okay? And where you see things up here, this is their dukedoms. He wasn't the Duke or Prince of Wales because at this time, I mean, this is what I've written up here. It's a little bit of an anachronism, but I put it up here to make it a little more easier for a modern audience to understand. Because at this time, the prince next in line to the throne wasn't automatically Prince of Wales. That doesn't come down until you get to Henry, okay, once Bolingbroke becomes king. After Bolingbroke becomes king, Henry is no longer, or Prince Hal, is no longer Henry Monmouth. He's now Wales, or Henry, Prince of Wales. It begins kind of here, okay? So, Edward III had 7 sons. I don't remember if he had any daughters. Odds are, he probably had 1 or 2 at least. 2 of them died in youth, or when they were young. So, Edward, the Black Prince, notice, I don't have Edward III's dates up there, but Edward III died 1377. You can pick that up from here. So he died 1377. The Black Prince, notice, preceded him in death. So, who would have become probably Edward IV, didn't become Edward IV because he died a year before his father died. That's why he doesn't become king. His son, his eldest son, becomes king. But notice, if you go by this, who should be next in line? Okay, he dies before Edward dies. So he's not going to be considered. Look when he dies, 1368. Okay, Richard II is born, or Richard, who becomes Richard II, is born in 1367. Okay, so he dies a year after he's born, but he dies also before his father dies. So he's out. Well, John of Gaunt's still around. How come John of Gaunt doesn't become king? He wasn't next in line after all of these. Who's next in line? This is the law of the right of inheritance, primogeniture. Why?
Because his dad was next in line.
Exactly, because he's the eldest son of the eldest son. So, look at it today. If all of this still held sway today, okay, who's the eldest son of Queen Elizabeth? Charles. Okay? If Charles were to die and Queen Elizabeth were to die, who becomes king? Does Charles have any brothers and or sisters? Yes. He has 2 brothers, Andrew and Edward, I think. Okay? And he has 2 sons. And now, 3 grandchildren? So who becomes monarch according to this law? Okay. Charles' eldest son, according to this law back then. Why am I emphasizing this law back then? Parliaments changed the law. They changed it upon the birth, or shortly before, the birth of Princess Charlotte, one of William's and Kate's children, second child, I believe. So that today, if Charles died, and William died, and what's his eldest son? George. And George died, Charlotte, who is 2 years old maybe, would become queen. So Harry, out of luck. Okay? Edward and Andrew, out of luck. I think Princess Margaret's dead. Queen Elizabeth's sister, yeah, I'm pretty sure she's dead. Because the primogenitor part, it's just no longer eldest son. Now it's just eldest child. Okay? But it does still kind of go down that line. So if Harry wanted to conspire to become king, what does he have to do? This kind of gets you into the Richard III kind of mentality. And all his kids. He's got to kill his brother and his 3 children. And his father and his grandmother. Well, that would be more Richard III, according to Shakespeare's version of the play. Right? So, what we see when this play kind of opens is there's an argument among Henry Bolingbroke and Thomas Mowbray, who's not up here. Why? He has no relation to the king. He's not royalty. Okay? Bolingbroke, notice, he does have a claim to the throne. It's tenuous, but if you're the child of a king, you have a, let's use the modern American system. You are in the line of succession. It might be like, imagine he had a child. It'd almost be impossible for this person's child to become king. Why? Because you got all these others, first of all, and then all of their children. Okay? That would have a better claim than William of Windsor's offspring if they had it. So, Richard becomes king in 1367. Notice, John of Gaunt is what relation to Richard II? He's his uncle, and he frequently refers to him as uncle, as the Duke of York is also Richard's uncle. Okay? He's dead. When the play opens, he's dead. Thomas of Woodstock. Okay? So, Lionel, Duke of Clarence, John of Gaunt, Duke of Lancaster, Edmund, Duke of York, Thomas, Duke of Gloucester. It's his death that prompts the opening of our play. How did Thomas of Woodstock die? Okay, so we have, versus Bolingbroke versus Thomas Mowbray, who is Duke of what? Bolingbroke is Duke of Hereford. Pardon? Mowbray is Duke of Norfolk. Don't pronounce the L. Norfolk. Okay? So, no claim to the throne. Kind of a claim to the throne. Bolingbroke is accusing Norfolk, or Mowbray, of what? Why?
Of intentionally arranging for Gloucester's death. Because Gloucester died in his care, and he's almost like he conspired for that to happen.
Because Norfolk was in charge of the forces, I think it was in Calais. He was in France, okay? And Thomas of Gloucester, G-L-A-W, pronunciation, Gloucester, S-T-I-R, okay? Worcester, not Worcestershire, okay? Worcester. So Thomas of Gloucester died while under the authority or power of Mowbray. Now, Mowbray is going to imply, yeah, he was under my protection, he was under my authority when he died, but I didn't give the order. Who did? Almeril, who is the son of Duke of York.
He's accused of having conspired to kill Gloucester.
Well, he's not accused of necessarily having conspired. He's accused of being involved in the very deed. See, Mowbray's not accused of being the one to do the sword thrust, so to speak. Okay? So Mowbray's kind of like, hey, you know, like a good SS officer, I was just following orders. Okay? So he accuses him of treason. He accuses him of violating the laws of knighthood. Like, you accuse me of treason. And you get this wonderful scene where they're all throwing down gauntlets, you know. What does that mean? Challenging to a duel. Okay? So this is the opening of the play is what? Possible civil war. I mean, that's what could break out when you have two dukes accusing each other of treason. What does that mean? One duke with all of his forces could go into open warfare against another duke and all of his forces. You get two dukes going into open warfare, and that could tear the country apart. Okay? So, we'll talk about that other stuff in a moment. Hopefully we can get through Act 3. Probably not. So let's briefly, very briefly, look at the dramatis personae. So you have King Richard II, his queen, which we're not going to talk about much, John of Gaunt, Duke of Lancaster, King Richard's uncle, Henry Bolingbroke, John of Gaunt's son, Duke of Hereford, claimant to his father's dukedom of Lancaster, meaning if he dies, he becomes no longer Duke of Hereford, he's now Duke of Lancaster. Okay? That's that law of inheritance. I die, what I have goes to my eldest son. My eldest son loves to refer to himself as the heir. And my eldest daughter, who is older than my eldest son, yes, the heir, A-I-R, head. One's in nursing school, one's in law school. Neither of them are airheads. Duke of York, Edmund of Langley, King Richard's uncle. Notice, York is younger than John of Gaunt, but not by much. Okay. Then you have the Duchess of York, the Duke of Emerald, York's son, etc., etc. Duchess of Gloucester, widow of Thomas of Woodstock. And notice, what does she say? She accuses the king. She thinks her nephew offed her husband. Okay? She's bitter. Reasonably so, I would say. So, we see Richard come in with all these other nobles in attendance. The scene is England and Wales. Now, by making it England and Wales, Shakespeare is violating one of the classical three unities. This is according to Aristotle in his book on poetics. The three unities: time, 2, place, 3, action. Unity of time. Aristotle based this upon his reading of classical Greek tragedy, primarily Oedipus the King. Okay? And said on the basis of Oedipus the King and a few other tragedies, he derived these three unities. That is, real tragic action or real tragic plays, and by that he really means all drama, okay, though not comedies, have to follow these three unities. I know, these are histories, they're not tragedies, but it still applies. Unity of time. The action should occur within a 24-hour span. Okay? If you've ever read Oedipus the King, 24 hours lapse. Doesn't seem like it, but it does. From beginning to end. Antigone, 24 hours lapse. Oedipus at Colonus, 24 hours lapse. If you read the Eumenides, the Oresteia, Agamemnon, the libation bearers, and the Eumenides, 24 hours for each one of those. All right? So, unity of time. Plot must occur within 24 hours. Unity of place. There's one location. All of Oedipus the King occurs where? In front of Oedipus's palace. The whole thing right there. You get to the Oresteia, the three plays of Agamemnon, the libation bearers, and the Eumenides, it's not a single place. Which is why Aristotle said, those three plays don't rank quite as highly as Sophocles' three plays. Sophocles are perfection, almost. Okay? England and Wales violates it right there. Unity of action. One plot. Shakespeare takes all three of these unities and goes, boom, just blows them out of the water. Okay? So, Richard comes in. Old John of Gaunt. Time-honored Lancaster. Hast thou, according to thy oath and bond, brought hither, blah, 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 blah. So, notice, this is a room of state, and the year is approximately 1398. John of Gaunt's got a year to go. At most. Because we're not told when in 1398, and I'm not sure when in 1399 he dies. What if he dies in January and it's December? And he's only got a couple months. Well, what happens within the course of the play? He does die. Okay? So, he says, did you bring your son? I have, my liege. Hast thou sounded him, that is, have you questioned him, if he appeal the Duke on ancient malice, or worthily, as a good subject should, on some known ground, that, in other words, does he have an old grudge against him? Is that what this is all about? Or does he have some kind of new charge of treachery? He says, I've sifted him. Beautiful language. He's taken his son and he's run him through a sifter. He's gotten the fine details out of him. He says, okay, bring him in. So they come in, and notice Bolingbroke is, dutifully, obsequious to his king, as is Mowbray. Look at their opening lines. Many years of happy days befall my gracious sovereign, my most loving liege. And Mowbray kind of goes one step. If this were Lear, this is Lear's eldest daughter saying, I love you this much. And Lear's second oldest daughter going, yeah, well, I love you this much, Daddy. Mowbray, each day still better, others happiness. May each day increase the previous day's happiness. Okay? Oh, thanks, guys. Richard says, but flatters us. One of you has what? Louder? Has committed treason, or is committing treason. One of you is only uttering fine platitudes without sincerity. Okay? So, Richard addresses first Bolingbroke. Why?
Royalty.
Oh, is it because he suspects Bolingbroke more? Or is it because Bolingbroke is the one who's been more vociferous in his attacks or charges of treason? And it could also be because Bolingbroke has what relation to Richard? They're cousins. They're kin. So, let heaven be the record to my speech. What does that mean? That's a long, fancy way of saying And Scarlett O'Hara is, God is my witness, you know. So, you swear by God in 1398. Does that mean, so help me God, in 2018? No. No, because, yeah, I mean, you believe it more back then. Okay? With some qualifications. So, he turns to Mowbray and says, Now, Thomas Mowbray, do I turn to thee, and mark my greeting well, for what I speak my body shall make good upon this earth, or my divine soul answer it in heaven. If I don't prove upon you here, I will answer it. Now, he doesn't mean in heaven like for the rest of eternity. He means when I go knocking to the pearly gates. Okay? So how's he going to prove it on his body? What does he mean by prove? What do you do, for any of you who bake, when you prove bread dough? Okay, it's rising, it's testing. He's going to test it upon his soul. What do you do when you test something? It's not like taking a test in, it kind of is. You're determining its quality. Okay? It's trying something. Thou art this is what I'm going to prove, either on your body or when I get to heaven. Thou art a traitor and a miscreant. Miscreant, like you have been miscreated. God forgot something, like a conscience with you. Too good to be so. Why? Because he's a knight. Knights shouldn't be traitorous. And too bad to live. Because you're too good as a knight to be a traitor, you are therefore too bad to go on living. You forfeited your life, he's saying. So he goes on, since the more fair and crystal is the sky, the uglier seem the clouds that in it fly. That is a little image Shakespeare introduces here that his son will kind of introduce at the beginning of Henry IV, Part 1. Okay? That Bolingbroke's son, Henry, Prince of Wales, affectionately called Hal, he'll play on this idea in his opening soliloquy, his first speech his first soliloquy in Henry IV, Part 1. So he goes on and says, with a foul traitor's name stuff I thy throat, in which, so please my sovereign, ere I move, what my tongue speaks, my right drawn sword may prove. Before we leave here, I hope I can prove this on you. How's he going to prove it? Is he going to lay out the facts? This is Exhibit A, this is Exhibit B, this is Exhibit C? No. How's he going to do it?
Fight.
I'm going to kill you. Let's go off and fight to the death. How does that prove anything?
God's supposed to be on the side of the right.
God is on the side of the right. Exactly. Okay. So, Mowbray responds, first, skipping a little bit, the fair reverence of your highness curbs me from giving reins and spurs to my speech. In other words, oh great king, because we are in your presence, I'm going to watch what I say. Because if you weren't here, I would let fly. Probably means, a string of 4-letter expletives, Which else would post until it had returned. These terms of treason doubled down his throat. Doubled down. That's kind of like Hereford has said, I dare you. Oh yeah? Well, I double dare you. Oh yeah? Well, I triple dog dare you. Setting aside his high blood's royalty. Notice, Mowbray knows it's dangerous to accuse Bolingbroke of really anything. Why? He's royal blood. You don't accuse royalty without really good, solid proof. Setting aside his high blood's royalty, and let him be no kinsman to my liege. In other words, Lord, sever yourself from him. Don't think of him as cousin. I do defy him. and I spit at him. Cue your Monty Python, if you've ever seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I call him a slanderous coward and a villain, which to maintain I would allow him odds and meet him. That is, he wants to fight me? Fine. I'll fight him. In fact, I'll fight him how? With one hand tied behind my back. That's what he means at odds. I'll give him odds in battle. Were I tied to run afoot, even to the frozen ridges of the Alps or any other ground inhabitable, wherever Englishman durst set his foot. And so what does Bolingbroke do? He throws down his gauge. Pale, trembling. Okay, now the next word he uses in 14th century England, what would be a modern equivalent? The next word he uses is coward. What's the modern equivalent? Coward, isn't it? You have to think of a racial slur to really get the meaning of coward in a society of nobles. It's like he's calling him nigger. I mean, that's what? Them's fighting words. Okay? When Bolingbroke calls him coward, it's all bets are off at that point. There I throw my gauge, disclaiming here the kindred of my king. No, you're not going to hide behind my relationship to the king to get out of fighting me. There, we're done, king and I. No more relation. And lay aside my high blood's royalty, which fear not reverence make thee to accept. He's saying, you're not going to fight me because of that. It's out of fear. It's not because you revere our high blood. If guilty dread have left thee so much strength as to take up mine honor's pawn, then stoop, bend over, pick it up. By that and all the rights of knighthood else, while I make good against thee arm to arm, what I have spoke or thou canst worse devise. So Mowbray takes it up, says I take it up. Okay, now what have they just accomplished? They've completed something. Yeah, that is like a contract. Okay? When Mowbray picks it up and says, I take it up, that would be like today signing your name to a contract. Okay? Bolingbroke signed his name when he threw his gauge down. Mowbray signs his name when he picks it up. They are now contractually, by the laws of knighthood in the late 14th century, to fight. There's only one thing that could stop them. The king. Where neither of them would be to blame. If something stops them, and they don't fight, and it's not the king, one of them is to blame. One of them, or maybe both of them, is a coward.
Does it have to be to the death?
Yeah. Yeah, this isn't you get 3 points by hitting them. This is to the death. And by that sword I swear, which gently laid my knighthood on my shoulder, that is, not necessarily Richard II's, because I don't remember Thomas Mowbray's dates. That knighthood might have been by Edward III, but probably not. Okay, because if he's about the same age as he is, okay, by that knighthood I swear, which gently laid my knighthood on my shoulder, I'll answer thee in any fair degree or chivalrous design of knightly trial. So, what doth our cousin lay to Mowbray's charge? So now they've agreed to kill each other. Notice what they haven't really gotten to in terms of the contract. What's not been laid out? The exact charges. Okay? The prosecutor, Bolingbroke, hasn't spelled everything out. So he goes on. And Bolingbroke lays out the charges. Mowbray hath received 8,000 nobles in name of lendings for your highness's soldiers. Okay? He's got 8,000 troops For what? Oh, they are to support you, my lord. That is, they're fighting for Mowbray on your behalf, the which he hath detained for lewd employments. Line 90, vile, base. It doesn't mean they're all hitting the whorehouses. What it means is they're not acting according to a royal charge, like a false traitor and injurious villain. More, that's what besides mean, I say and will in battle prove, here, elsewhere, anywhere else, what? That all the treasons for these 18 years, complotted and contrived in this land, fetched from false Mowbray, these 18 years, this is 1398, so this is since 1380, when Richard was only 3 years old, and when Bolingbroke was only 3 years old. He's saying Mowbray has been false to the crown for an awful long time. Further, I say and will maintain that he did plot the Duke of Gloucester's death. So just to soon believing adversaries, and consequently like a traitor coward, sluiced out his innocent soul through streams of blood. Notice, he plotted it. He doesn't say he carried it out himself. He is an accomplice. He is a co-conspirator. All right? Richard, how high a pitch his resolution soars. In other words, these are serious charges. What say you? What's your defense? Let him turn away, oh, let my sovereign turn away his face and bid his ears a little while be deaf. In other words, turn away and do this. See no evil, hear no evil. Why? Till I have told this slander of his blood, how God and good men hate so foul a liar. This slander of his blood. He is saying Bolingbroke is a slanderer of the royal blood. He's got bad blood. All right? That's why he wants the king to turn away. I don't want you to hear what I'm going to say about the blood that runs through your cousin's veins. So, he goes, no, don't worry about that. Impartial are our eyes and ears. Were he my brother, nay, my kingdom's heir, little bit of foreshadowing there, as he is but my father's brother's son, now by my scepter's awe I make a vow. If Richard dies, who should become king? I mean, if Richard drops dead of a heart attack right now, right here at this moment, who would become king? John of Gaunt. Okay? Because he's next in line. He's already dead. He's already dead. Okay? He says, nope, make a vow. Such neighbor nearness to our sacred blood should nothing privilege and no so, speak. For Gloucester's death I slew him not. Now that's pretty categorical, right? I didn't do it. But what? To my own disgrace neglected my sworn duty in that case. What does he mean? Louder. He knew about it? He didn't stop it. That's, I failed in my neglected sworn duty. I didn't stop it. For you, notice now he turns away from Richard. He turns to John of Gaunt. Why? What was Gloucester to John of Gaunt that he wasn't to Richard? Closer kin. Brother. Okay? For you, my noble lord of Lancaster, the honorable father to my foe. Notice, you I hold in honor. It's not your fault your son's a lowlife. Once did I lay an ambush for your life. A trespass that doth vex my grieved soul. In other words, and that's something that still problems me or disturbs me, that I did that. But ere I last received the sacrament, before I last went to the church for communion, I did what? I confessed it, and exactly begged your grace's pardon. He's not saying, I went to a priest and confessed it, though I think that is also implied. Who did he go to? Christ says in the Gospels, if you have a problem with somebody and you are making your way to the temple to give your offering, stop and do what? Go back to the person you have a problem with and make it right. Then go to the temple and make your offering. And you can take that make your offering as, in the church's language, to receive the Eucharist. So before you go to receive the Eucharist or communion, you got to get right with everybody else. Yeah.
So, Mowbray wanted or planned at some point, and then canceled the plan to kill
John of Gaunt.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
That's exactly what he's saying.
Mowbray's not in any way close at all to the royal line of succession.
Nope.
Do we ever know his, why he wanted to kill him? What was he gaining from it? Is that something we find out, or
Not in the play, we don't. And I don't remember historically, or even if that is historically true.
Right.
Okay, one thing to remember about Shakespeare's history plays, which is how most people know English history. They're not historically true. Okay? I mean, the general outlines are true, but Shakespeare takes characters and he moves them around in time. So, for example, when we get to Henry IV, Part 1, in Henry IV, Part 1, Henry has a very, very famous foil, a counterpart character, Harry Hotspur, okay, son of the Duke of Northumberland. In Shakespeare's play, same age. In historical reality, Harry Hotspur was the age of Bolingbroke. He was old enough to be Hal's father. But Shakespeare's like, oh, that won't work. Because that makes Northumberland old enough to be his grandfather. No. I want Northumberland to be, which means Northumberland is old enough to be Henry Bolingbroke's father. Like Edward III. And historically, he was. But Shakespeare's like, no, I don't want that. I want Northumberland to be the same age as Bolingbroke. So I'm just going to collapse time there. Similarly, I need a good foil for Hal. So I'm going to make Hotspur his same age. Okay? So to answer the specific question, I don't know what the cause is behind Mowbray's plot against Northumberland, if there's a historical reality behind that. So he goes on, and I beg your grace's pardon, and I hope I had it. This is my fault. Okay? Now I think that is the ancient malice that the king refers to when talking to John of Gaunt about your son's problem with Thomas Mowbray. Is he still griping that he wanted to kill you, all those years ago? As for the rest appeal, that is for the other charges, it issues from the rancor of a villain, a recreant, a most degenerate traitor, which in myself I boldly will defend and unchangeably hurl down. So now he throws down his gage. So he accepted the gage of Bolingbroke. So he throws down his gage. And Richard says, wrath, kindle, gentlemen. Gentlemen. That implies, one, social status, but it also implies a set characteristic or set behavior, manners. Okay? This is not the way gentlemen behave. Gentlemen solve problems how? With words, with argument. If you read the introduction to the play, what did your editor, David Bevington, say is one of the hallmarks of the character of Richard II? It's one of the things he's known for. Passionate. Louder. Eloquent. He's Obama. It's one of the hallmarks of Obama's presidency, supposedly. Okay? throw that out there for some. He was great with words. Everything he said just sounded so eloquent and stuff. Except for when he talked about the 57 states and pronounced Corpsman. Don't get me going, okay? 40 years ago, no, I'm not going to go there yet. So, he says, be ruled by me, let's purge this collar without letting blood. In other words, there's not going to be any fighting. We're going to purge this collar, this anger. It's not rational anger. It's irrational. It's prompted by bile in the system. Okay? How are we going to do it? Deep malice makes too deep incision. Forget, forgive. Conclude and be agreed. Forget, forgive means what? Rodney King, LA riots, about 1992 or so. Can't we all just get along? Can't we just let bygones be bygones? Well, what if they each accused each other of? Treachery. You said I was a traitor. No, I can't forget that. No, I can't forgive that. And so what does Gaunt say? Now keep in mind, Gaunt's kind of the wise elder statesman. Throw down, my son, the Duke of Norfolk's gage. Because he picked it up. Throw it down means what? I'm going to let it go. I'm not going to accept the challenge. Of course, not accepting a challenge can also imply what? I'm a coward. But now he has his king and his father saying, cue the Frozen song, let it go. In Norfolk, notice the king, throw down his. Notice, no exclamation mark, but still, what does that mean? Junior, put it down. Gaunt, win, Harry, win. Why? Because Gaunt's still holding it. He's thinking what the king has said. He's thinking what his father said. He's like, won't go. Obedience bids. I should not bid again. This is not a kindly, gentle, soft father going, come on, Harry, let it go. Obedience bids. The bids part is commands. I should not. I shouldn't have to ask you again. This is not the father who says, throw it down. Okay, if you don't throw it down now, I'm going to. Okay, I'm really serious now. You get more of the impression John of Gaunt speaks once and Harry goes, yes, father, and does what he asks. Richard, Norfolk, throw down. We bid. There is no boot. Your gloss tells you help for it, or remedy. That is, there is nothing else. Mowbray kneels. Myself I throw, dread sovereign, at thy foot. He doesn't throw the gauntlet down. He kneels at Richard's foot. My life thou shalt command, but not my shame. You can take my life from me. How? By commanding me to go fight some losing battle. But you can't take away my reputation. That's what he means when he says, you can't command my shame. What shame? He called me a traitor. You can't not let me defend myself against that. The one my duty owes, life. My life owes you duty. But my fair name, despite of death that lives upon my grave. Well, what goes in the grave? The body, right? The body doesn't live anymore. The life doesn't go on. What does go on afterwards? Your name. We still talk about, well, most of us do. I know there are some whack jobs who don't. We still talk about the founders of the American experiment as what? I mean, they're almost godlike, being a little bit facetious. But they're above the common pale. The guys who came up with the Declaration, the Constitution, you don't see those kind of people every day. I would argue we haven't seen them for 250 years. I did a talk last week on Washington's farewell address to a group over in Franklin, a 3-hour talk and discussion. If you've never read Washington's farewell address, read it. Because nobody seemingly has listened to it since he had it published in 1796. Because every one of our presidents has not taken his advice. Did I see hand up?
Doesn't he say in that one not to even choose sides? He's not going to be Republican or Democrat.
He says,
Heavily against the
beware
bipartisan
parties.
system.
Why? Because when Washington first gave up the presidency, you know, he was elected for one term and he wanted to retire then. And he already saw what was happening when he was set to retire. The new government, the new country, was already splitting into parties. He's like, beware parties. He said a whole bunch of other stuff. You know, don't go into debt. Don't establish permanent alliances. NATO, anyone? Don't have countries that you favor and countries that you disfavor. Special relationship with the United Kingdom? No. I mean, all of that stuff, Washington was entirely against. Okay? The spot of death that lives upon my grave, to dark dishonor's use thou shalt not have. I am disgraced, impeached, and baffled here, pierced to the soul with slander's venomed spear. In other words, I have to defend what? His honor. There's a term we don't hear much anymore. What is it? His integrity. Why do we not hear those words very more? Because we see so little of it in our elected leaders. Okay? Richard. Yes.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I feel like we talk more about honor, like, towards, like, firemen and, like, army and stuff like that than we do, like, politicians.
Why? Why do we, 9/11? Just about 7 minutes ago. Why do we honor first responders? I've got friends I'm from California. I've got friends who live in Northern California who had to evacuate Redding because of the car fire. She wasn't able to go back for 4 or 5 days. There's another huge fire now that is joined with the car fire and the HERS fire. It's called the Delta fire. So now you have this huge fire. And about 50 miles of Interstate 5 is closed because it's gone over. And it went over when there were cars going up and down. I mean, there are burnt out rigs. Just,
So never not a fire anymore?
yeah. This isn't necessarily unusual. A lot of people are blaming climate change and all that, which is total nonsense. The reason why they're having such bad fires is because the forests in California haven't been managed. There is a ton, just a ton, of dead trees lying there or standing there. Dead, natural causes, beetles and such, old age. Well, it used to be the practice, the National Forest Service in National Forests, the State Forestry Service in State Forests would go in and clear that out. They're not doing it. So that when you have dry conditions, guess what? Northern California, every summer, is dry.
You can't like throw cigarettes at your car or anything, right?
No! Utter idiocy.
Burn a stake down, yeah.
You don't have fireworks in California. Why? A simple bottle rocket will start everything off. The car fire started because somebody was driving their car, pulling a trailer, blew out a tire on the trailer, the rim turned on the asphalt, creating sparks that caught some dry grass. boom. We don't have the kind of dry grass in California, in Tennessee. Unless we get summer of 2012. We had two weeks here of over 100-degree temperatures. The grass got really dry then. If I'd been smoking a cigar and thrown the butt out into the grass, I would have had a conflagration. Okay? You don't go there. So, Richard says, rage must be withstood. Give me his gauge. What does he mean, rage must be withstood? What does withstood mean? To withstand something means what?
Don't give him to your reason. Don't get angry. Yes, he falls with power. Yes, he is maligned.
Okay. Think about this. To withstand means to stand against. Yet with means what? Alongside. In conjunction to. I'm going to the store with my friends. Doesn't mean I'm going against them. It means they're coming with me. This is the only instance in modern English where with has its old English meaning. Its old English meaning is always against. Notice, that word completely changes meaning. Old English luvu, love, doesn't change its meaning. It gets adapted, but it doesn't now mean, hey, this one means the exact opposite of what it used to mean. Okay? So, rage must be withstood, stood against. Why does rage ever, in a polite, mannerly, civil society, produce something good? No. Rage never does. Where should rage be practiced? One place. On the battlefield. On the battlefield. That is where you can become a, to use the Norse, and I'll break it up, berserker. Berserker means a bear shirt. What? How do you become a bear shirt? It means, metaphorically, you put on the trappings of a bear. Your humanity, your reason, out the door. You become like a wild grizzly. And you just kill whatever comes near you. Give me his gauge. Now, that's not a request. Lions make leopards tame. Who's the lion? Richard. The red rampant lion is one of the symbols of the monarchy in England. That's why if you go to any royal property, you will see the lion rampant. Okay? What's the other part of that? What's the other one usually? It is the unicorn. Okay? So, lions make tepperds lame. Lions make leopards tame. The leopard refers to Mowbray. Mowbray, yeah, but not change his spots. But the lion doesn't make the leopard not a leopard. You are asking me, he says, to be something I am not. The purest treasure mortal times afford is spotless reputation. The best thing we can earn in mortal times, mortal living, is what? A good name. Go back to earlier English literature. Take my 3010 course. Well, you read more Old English literature than you will in any other 3010 course. And what does all the literature emphasize? You get one chance at producing what? A good reputation. Because once you're dead, there's nothing you can do. And a good reputation is really ultimately the only way you can live on in this world. Even though Shakespeare is going to say in the sonnets, you can do that one other way. Have lots of kids. Why? Because then your family name keeps on going. That away, that is spotless reputation away, men are but gilded loam or painted clay. What is loam? Clay. What is gilded? Gold plated. Gold plated. Okay, ladies, I'm going to be sexist here. Let's assume you're in a relation. I'm going to be, whatever. Let's assume you're in a relationship with a guy and you're about to get engaged and he proposes to you and he gives you a ring made of clay that's covered with gold. What do you think? Cheap bastard. What kind of ring do you want? Real gold, preferably with a big rock on it, right? Not a rock that he found outside. Diamond. Why? What's the gold imply? Is it just value? Just look at this. It's 15 grand. Okay, is that it?
Also their position of power, what they can afford.
Okay, what's the difference between gold and clay? What else? Where can you find clay? Go outside. Dig in this dirt and you'll find clay. You go outside, dig in this dirt. What are the odds you're going to find gold? Yeah, hopefully a lot. Because, see ya. So what does that say about gold? It's rare. That's why it has high value. Because of its rarity. But you take reputation, men are but gilded what? Dirt. What's he saying about the real reputation? Its value is because it is so rare. You take my good name away from, you make me do this, and I am, as Hamlet will say, we're all just nothing but mud. Mine honor is my life. Both grow in one. Life grows in honor. Honor grows in life. How? By behavior, by actions. He's not saying, I have honor simply because I am Duke of Norfolk. He's saying, I have earned honor by my actions through my life. Shut up, Siri. Take honor from me, and my life is done. You make me do this, O dread king, and you may as well do what? Kill me yourself. Then, dear my liege, mine honor, let me try. Try there means what? Fight. Let me prove. In that I live. That is, I live in honor, and for that will I die. Now, all throughout the history plays, honor is a major theme. In fact, I would argue honor is a major theme in all of Shakespeare's plays. Why? Because from the beginning of Shakespeare's life to the end of Shakespeare's life, the meaning of that word is subtly changing. Just as it hasn't stopped changing from the end of Shakespeare's life to today. Now, I would argue, unfortunately, this is almost held, having an ideal of honor is almost derisive in our society. Like, it's what? Old-fashioned. It's nostalgic. It's a construct, etc. Okay? Yeah, it is a construct. Is it a construct that over the course of human history has it made humanity better or has it made humanity worse? I would be one of those who would say it's actually one of those things that elevates humanity, makes us a little bit better. Okay? So, Richard hears that, and then he turns to Bolingbroke. Throw up your gauge. Notice he doesn't say, Mowbray, here I command you. Why? Mowbray's already made it clear. I can't. So, Richard, he's kind of appealing here to Bolingbroke. O God, defend my soul from such deep sin. I could obey you, liege, but that would be what? Deep sin. Sin is against, people down here, but who is sin ultimately against? God. I could obey you, but that would be sinning against God. And as Antigone says in the great play by Sophocles, we have longer to please those down below than we do here, those here above. Those down below, she's talking about the gods of the underworld and the dead, as opposed to kings here. Because kings here and life here are governed by what? Time, temporality. Depending upon your political perspective, Trump's only got 2 more years. Or maybe 6 more years. But definitely only 6 more years, right? And then gone. And then there's somebody else. Who knows? Maybe it'll be another Bush. Maybe it'll be Chelsea Clinton. God forbid either of those happen, Ere my tongue shall wound my honor with such feeble wrong, or sound so base a parle, my teeth shall tear the slavish motive of a recanting fear, and spit it bleeding in its high disgrace, where shame doth harbor even in Mowbray's face. We were not born to sue, but to command. To sue means we're not doing this in suit. Like, we're not pleading. We're not begging. No. We were born, how? As future king. To command. I'm not asking you guys. I'm telling you. But, since we can't, to make you friends, be ready as your life shall answer it. I Coventry upon St. Lambert's. Okay, you guys want to fight and kill each other? Fine. Coventry, Lambert's Day, be there. So, they all leave. John of Gaunt comes in, talking with his wife. And Gaunt says, Alas, the part I had in Woodstock's blood doth more solicit me than Yorick's claims, to stir against the butchers of his life. The part I had in Woodstock's blood, meaning he was my brother. He's not saying I had something to do with Woodstock's death. He says, that, the fact that he was my brother, doth more solicit me than your exclaims. His wife is going on about, when is Woodstock going to be avenged? Honey, shut up. I don't need you reminding me. Why? Because he knew his brother longer than he knew her. Okay? Believe me, it's on my mind. I'm thinking about it. Which made the fault that we cannot correct. What's the fault that we cannot correct? Put we our quarrel to the will of heaven. He's saying that's what we have to do. What does that mean? To put your quarrel to the will of heaven. Not my will, but thine be done. That's what it means. To not think about how I'm going to solve my problems, but to use the modern wishy-washy kind of parlance, give it over to God. Who, that's the will of heaven, when they see the hours ripe on earth, will rain hot vengeance on offenders' heads. Yeah, but when is that when? Let's put that in modern language, depending upon your political persuasions. You're really hoping that when will be what? Not 2 years' time when Trump's term in office comes due and there's another election. It'll be when? Impeachment. Or when? Heart attack. Or when? According to some Hollywood actress, I don't remember who named, why do we not have a John Wilkes Booth today? Think about that. I was alive, but I was too young to remember JFK's assassination. But I remember watching RFK's assassination on TV. I remember Martin Luther King's assassination. I remember Malcolm X's assassination. I remember the 2 attempted assassinations on Jerry Ford's life. I remember vividly the attempted assassination on Reagan's life. You don't want the president, no matter what party, no matter what the president has done, to be assassinated. You don't want that to happen. Why? Okay, it elevates them. War, it throws the whole process into, the great chain of being. It takes a link out. Yeah, I know we have rights of succession and all that kind of stuff. But you don't want to do it that way. You go the election route. That's the genius of the system. He is saying, God will determine when it's time. Duchess, finds brotherhood in thee no sharper spur. What's she really saying? Don't give me the Jesus talk. You were his brother. You should what? How many of you have read Beowulf? If you haven't, take my Old English course. My 3010. Maybe if I ever offer it again at the upper division undergraduate level. The poem seemingly is entirely about vengeance, the feud. Okay? Hath love in thy old blood no living fire? Edward's 7 sons, whereof thyself art one, were as 7 vials of his sacred blood, or 7 fair branches springing from one root. And I'm sure Shakespeare would have just loved that symbolism of the 7. 7's the perfect number. If you go back to the Old Testament, look at the candelabra that was placed on the altar in the temple. It has 7 stems. You have the 7 letters to the 7 churches. In the book of Revelation, you have 7 candles. I mean, she's using all of this imagery, or it's all tied in there. Some of these 7 are dried by nature's course, this one and this one, and this one. Okay? Some of those branches by the destinies cut. But Thomas, my Lord, my life, my Gloucester, one vial full of Edward's, notice, sacred blood. Was Edward a god? So why is she talking about his blood as being sacred? Louis XIV, later on, the Sun King of France, uses the terminology of the divine right of kings. How do kings rule? Book of Romans, chapter, 12 or 13. All government is instituted by God. All government. What does that mean? All republican democracies, like the United States? Well, how many of those are there? Really only one. It's ours today. England doesn't have a republican democracy. Germany doesn't have a republican democracy. They're parliamentary. Okay? Israel has a republican democracy. England definitely didn't. Okay, so democracy. No. What does that mean? All governments. Yeah. If you take that literally, that even says when the Soviet Union came into power. Okay? One flourishing branch of his most royal root is cracked, and all the precious liquor spilt. That is, no one will ever come from this vial. He will never have any children now. And his summer leaves all faded by envy's hand and murder's bloody axe. Ah, gaunt his blood was thine. Thou art slain in him. Why? His blood is your blood. His blood is slain. Your blood is slain. Don't call it patience, Gaunt. It's despair. You've given up. In suffering thus thy brother to be slaughtered. So what purpose does she serve? She's like sitting there with a cattle prod going, get up, come on, get up, come on now, get up, go get them. Go get those who God's is the quarrel. God replies, for God's substitute, his deputy anointed in his sight, hath caused his death. Notice, God doesn't say, maybe God's substitute caused his death. Who is God's substitute? And that would be Richard. God's deputy. Why? Because the king rules by the authority of God. He is the viceroy. Even though the viceroy term comes in later, because viceroy means kind of like half king or king in place of. He is the viceroy for God in the world's kingdom. Okay? That's why he says, nope, the quarrel is with God. The quarrel what? Between Thomas's murderer and God. Who's Thomas' murderer? God is saying, I can't what? I can't go against Richard. Why? Because Richard is, for us here on earth, God. I can't take him on. Not because he's all-powerful, but to go against Richard would be to go against the church. Hath caused his death, the which if Richard has wrongfully caused Thomas's death, let heaven revenge. Why? For I may never lift an angry arm against his minister. This is the idea of passive obedience, which your introduction talked about. Which was what? It's the idea that God establishes all rule, and no matter how bad that rule gets, what do? You obey it. And maybe you get some really horrible ruler and or government. And why does God allow that to happen? Because the people under that government, under that ruler, have quote unquote fallen away somehow. They've done something wrong that has angered God. So God raises up that ruler as a what? Scourge. Scourge. Like the Passion, when Christ was scourged, what does that mean? Cat o' nine tails along the back. So that ruler becomes the cat o' nine tails over our backs. And do you get a fight back against that? Nope. You have to patiently bear it. Patiently endure it until what? Until God says, okay, not because that's enough pain I've inflicted upon them, but because the people turn their hearts back to God. What's the example? Look at the Old Testament. Beginning to end. That's the example. What repeatedly happens with the people of Israel. They stray from God. Notice the first word she used. Stray implies what? You're moving. And what are you doing? You're moving away from God. All throughout the Old Testament, you hear the language used. If you walk with me, if you walk in my ways, that kind of implies, think of the stupid little poster, footprints in the sand. If you walk in my footsteps, meaning do and follow my will, then what? Life will go smoothly for you. But if you don't, if you try to go the other way, you face the headwind. The headwind is God going, you, come back. The scourge is God's way of going, you, come back, turn. If you stop doing that, then that won't keep happening to you. Right? But the king becomes that. So that means you have to endure the problems of the king. It's part of Hamlet's slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. But why does he say that? Because when he finds out his stepfather/uncle, violating the old Levitical laws, by the way, is his father's murderer and has usurped his place as king, what does he say? Time is out of joint, O spite, that I was born to make it right. Time is out of joint. Why? Because in the entire universe now, that's all part of that scourge. That's all part of God's quote-unquote providential action. So, I can't do that. Where then, alas, may I complain myself? His wife says. Then who do I turn to? Where's the complaint department? To God, the widow's champion and defense. How do you know God is the widow's champion and defense? Matthew 25. When Jesus gives the parable of the Last Judgment. What's he say? Certain people I'm going to say go to my left, certain people I'm going to say to go to my right. Who goes to the right? Those who have fed the poor, or fed the hungry, helped the poor, clothed the naked, helped the needy, helped the widows. When did I do that to you? Inasmuch as you have done it unto the least of these. But when did I not? Inasmuch as you haven't done, you go this way. Okay? So, widows can appeal to God. We'll skip the rest of that act and scene, or that scene. Go on to page 751 in my edition, page 1, line 124. Yeah, I know, we're not even through Act 1. We're now at Coventry, and Richard calls forth Bolingbroke and Mowbray. They're getting ready to fight. Okay. And Richard calls it off. He says, stop. And list what with counsel we have done. Line 124. What with counsel? Notice it's C-O-U-N-C-I-L. It's not C-O-U-N-S-E-L. With counsel means in my council of advisors. The president has called the cabinet together. Okay? And the council agrees to this. For that our kingdom and earth should not be soiled with that dear blood which it hath fostered, and for our eyes do hate the dire aspect of civil wounds plowed up, blah, 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 blah. So what's he going to do? They're both going to be banished, right? What's Mowbray get? Life banishment. What's Bolingbroke get? 10 years, and then it gets reduced to 6, I think. Right? Mowbray says, the language I have learned these 40 years. So, 1398, so he was born in 1358. He's quite a bit older than Bolingbroke. The language I have learned these 40 years, my native English, now I must forego. And now my tongue's use is to me no more than an unstringed viol or a harp. Why a harp? Does he mean an unstringed harp? Possibly. Could also mean that he doesn't know how to play the harp. Which if you don't know how to play the harp, then it doesn't do any good to have one. Because you can't make music with it. And or like a cunning instrument cased up or being opened, put into his hands, that knows no touch to tune the harmony. Hamlet, talking about the recorders brought to him. Within my mouth you have enjailed my tongue, doubly portcullised with my teeth and lips. A dull and feeling barren ignorance has made my jailer to attend to me. I am too old to fawn upon a nurse, too far in years to be a pupil now. What's he getting at with this whole speech? It's not that he doesn't want to start over.
His life's over.
I can't. This old dog can't be taught a new trick. What's he really getting at? It's not that he doesn't have any place to go. He's got France, the Netherlands, Germany, Italy, etc. He's got no place where he can, speak his native tongue. If he can't speak his native tongue, you might as well not cut my tongue out. You might as well kill me. Richard, it boots thee not to be compassionate. In other words, Suck it up, Buttercup. After our sentence, planing comes too late. Okay? And then he gives his charge to Bolingbroke. And we'll pick up there and be way behind on Thursday.